this is Nick from originally Mariupol, correct?
Yes.
All right. Currently joining us from Rostov, where he is studying.
Yes.
And Nick has a YouTube channel in which he shows how the reconstruction of the city of Mariupol is taking place. So I invited him to come on and talk about things that are taking place there, how it was there during the war, what people think, what public opinion in those areas is, and just in general things we don't get an insight into from this side of the line. Now, obviously, it's very easy and probably gonna happen that we're gonna get called propagandists because we dared talk to someone who is from the other side of the line. But I think the moment that we stop interacting with people on the other side, stop viewing each other as human beings, and stop trying to understand why people think the way they think and what motivates people on the other side, then we're gonna get easily in the territory of dehumanization. So that's why I think it's important to have you on. So thank you for joining us. Could you first briefly introduce yourself, where you were from, and what you do?
I was born in Donetsk, and in 2014, when first war on Donbas started, I moved to Mariupol because it was more peaceful city, and I lived in Mariupol till this summer. And this summer I just moved in Rostov to study in university.
Right. And by the way, what are you studying?
Math and informational technologies.
All right. And you moved in 2014 or 2015 from Donetsk to Mariupol, correct? And what is the so if you could tell something about, for example, the political leanings of your upbringing, were you brought up apolitical, or viewing yourself as Ukrainian, or viewing yourself as Russian? How was this culturally in your home?
Well, I'm viewing myself like Russian, but at the same time, ethnically I'm Ukrainian, and I have Ukrainian surname and Ukrainian accent. And well, Donetsk and Mariupol was split because Donetsk was under Russia, under DPR, in fact, not under Russia, and Mariupol was Ukrainian. So yeah, it's really different cities.
Right.
And do you feel like prior to 2014, do you feel like this was there a lot of discussion, or were there many conflicts already, like maybe so on a lower level?
I was a kid, so
yeah, okay, yeah, sure.
So if there were any,
okay.
it was not in a way that you would notice it as a child.
What?
So
I didn't.
So if there were any conflicts between Russians and Ukrainians before 2014, it was in such a way that you would not notice it when you were a child, what you're saying?
No, it wasn't. Maybe somewhere on Western Ukraine, someone just maybe some conflicts like in the streets, but I don't know. In the Donetsk and in all of the East, everything was all right.
And what did you think? What were your first thoughts and your reactions when you first heard of the special military operation?
First days, like February, end of February, and beginning of March, it was really stressful, but I thought that it will be over very quickly and everything will be better under a Russian flag. I didn't think it will be so long and so bloody. I thought it will be like in Crimea, where just everyone greeted Russian army with flowers. and no one will be killed, and everything will be all right.
So you supported Russia then. Did you also support Russia earlier, or when did you become like consciously identifying with Russia?
A year before war, in 2021, in the summer, I just started to learn history, and I, how to say it, investigated this situation. And I understood that Mariupol and all of Eastern Ukraine should be Russian.
All right. And how would you judge the public sentiment, like what normal people think in Mariupol before 2022 and after, and has it changed? How do people feel living in Mariupol?
Before 2022 or 2014, you mean?
Both, I'd say.
I don't know what was before 2014, but there was a rebellion against Ukraine in Mariupol. So maybe most of people were pro-Russian.
Mm.
But before 2022, actually no one just cared, because most of people were neutral. No one touched them, so they didn't care, Ukraine or Russia. Of course, there were some active patriots of Russia and active patriots of Ukraine, but most of people just didn't care. And after, well, those who left here, obviously they are pro-Russian, because they seen the real face of Ukraine, because they were there when there were fightings, and also they are seeing what Russia is doing for Mariupol, and they support Russia.
All right.
And pro-Ukraine just
what
left to Europe mostly.
And what would you say Russia, because you're saying Russia is doing something for Mariupol, what are they doing for Mariupol? Or is Russia doing for Mariupol?
All of my YouTube channel is about it. Russia is reconstructing everything really intensively, and not only repairing, but also making it better than before war, much better than before war. I have many videos on it, so you can check it out.
Right. So I think that's also something, I mean, it happens in your comment section as well, that people call you a propagandist for showing this. But I always find that funny, because even, let's, for the sake of argument, say, okay, you're being paid to do that. Those videos, those images are real. You can see them. You can see how it looked before and how it looked after. It does not matter who is holding the camera. We can see that physically these buildings are being built. So I think that is beyond dispute, and you're really doing a service by documenting it and showing it. We have heard some mention of it in Western or pro-Western media, and what they've been saying is that the original population are not getting any of the apartments, and it's all going to people from Russia. So is any of this true, or could you explain this situation?
It's a very stupid lie, because why Russians need to migrate here? From Moscow, from Petersburg? No. Of course, some Russians are moving to rebuild, but most of people, maybe 19% of people who live in Mariupol, except builders who live in trailers and containers, are just those who stayed. And in school, I didn't meet anyone who come from Russia. All of us are just Ukrainians, maybe.
Yeah, like, why would you move to a war zone if you're not from there? So I didn't think that was logical anyway. You did mention, though, in one of your videos that there are some problems with bureaucracy, that it's difficult for people to get their apartment. What kind of these things are to be expected? Of course, war is chaos, but what kinds of things, what kinds of situations are happening?
It's when someone just comes to get their compensation. and everyone is saying him that we will tell you when it will be ready, and it can be months, it can be 2 months or half of a year. It's really a long process. But as I know, in the end, everyone are getting apartments and compensations. Just it's maybe really long time.
And is there any kind of loyalty statement or like political requirements, or is just anyone who can prove that they were living in Mariupol before 2022?
Apartments are the people who just had apartment and apartment or house was destroyed. And only if you had one apartment or one house, if you had like 2 apartments and one was destroyed, you don't get anything. Only for those who left their, who lost their only home.
Right. And you also, if I gather correctly from your videos, you were present in Mariupol during April and May 2022, correct?
Yes.
Can you give us some impression of what those months were like?
Apocalypse.
Right, of course. But for example, we have all seen the images on the news channels. Of course, all the Western media are saying Russia did all this, and all the Russian medias are saying Ukraine did all this. So, from your perspective, what has taken place in that period?
Ukrainians just used all of buildings as a life shield and made bases in many buildings. So Russians had no choice but to destroy it, fortunately. And also Ukrainians had mortars and tanks, and they also tried to not leave anything to Russia. Scorched land tactics. So, in my opinion, 2 sides did this, but it was Ukrainian initiative to fight in Mariupol.
Right. So, what should have happened in your opinion? Of course, strategy that fighting took place, but what would have been a better solution?
What did I want that days? I just hoped that Ukrainians just will surrender and, well, we just live peacefully under Russian flag. No one will die. Yes.
Right. Now, there's been reports. I've heard people claim that before 2022, in the southern provinces and in the Ukraine-controlled parts of Donbass, there were laws infringing upon the rights of Russian speakers, for example, relating to speaking Russian in school or printing media in Russian. How was this? How was this the case? Can you tell anything about this?
It was language law. Ukraine accepted it in 2021, just a year before war, and everything in Russian was forbidden. You could speak on Russian with no problems. Yes, Ukrainians are always saying that, but you cannot watch some movie in the cinema on Russian, no education in Russian, no advertisements in Russian, and no services in Russian. Just you can speak Russian, and everyone everywhere else Russian is forbidden, like now.
Right. And Russian, if I understand correctly, is the native language or home-spoken language of like 90% of the population of Mariupol, correct?
No, not 90%. Everyone speak Russian.
But before,
I never. In Donetsk, some old people, maybe 17 years old,
right,
speak Ukrainian, but they speak not literature Ukrainian, but some mix of Russian and Ukrainian. And in Mariupol, I never heard something like Ukrainian. Just everyone speak Russian.
Also before 2022.
Of course.
Right. So I think that also puts in perspective the extent to which that is infringement of rights of people, because it's not, it's like the language people are raised with, correct? And like they're not immigrants or anything, they were born there, and then they're banned from speaking their own language. And did this, like everyone there speaks Russian and spoke Russian, did people also have sympathy towards Russia? And did the 2014-2015 war affect people's opinion of Russia?
Well, as I said, most of people just didn't care. But yes, there were people who supported Ukraine actively and people who supported Russia actively, and also many pro-Russian people they disappeared in 2014 when Ukraine retook Mariupol. But most of people just neutral before 2022.
And were there any restrictions on speaking out for Russia before 2022 and for Ukraine after 2022? Any kind of repression or people getting knocks on doors, people disappearing? Was any of that going on?
As I said, in 2014, many people disappeared, and I know people have relatives and friends disappeared because they supported Russia. SBU, it's like Служба безопасности Украины, is just made many people disappear with no trace. And before this war, maybe a year ago, in 2021 or around so, there were also a law that you cannot justify Russian actions against Ukraine. Denying Russian aggression, this is how it's called. I don't know what's the punishment, but it exists. And also there were denied Soviet USSR symbols like hammer and sickle and red star. So yes. And after 2022, well, I don't know. I don't know anyone who supports Ukraine, but I don't think there are some repressions because Russia isn't really controlling people's network.
Okay.
But I think someone will be with Ukrainian flag on the street. Yeah, I think he will get imprisoned maybe for 15 days, maybe.
Okay. Now, of course, you know that there is an allegation against Russia, specifically against Putin, for genocide, because children were, as they say, abducted. Now, from my perspective, I would say it's logical to remove orphans from a war zone because they might get killed.
Yes.
Of course, you having lived there, you would be one to notice if people from your school, people you know, were disappearing against their will to Russia. So have you seen any signs of this going on?
Well, there was evacuation by Russia, and I think in Western logic it means abduction. I know maybe half of my classmates left to Russia, and maybe some of them are abducted. But honestly, I talked with some friends on this topic, and they said that they would want someone to abduct them when there were fightings, because obviously it's better to live in Moscow than in city under shell.
Yeah. So how do you view these claims? Just pure
False.
political motivation, or
About abduction?
yeah?
It's so lie.
All right. Now I want to ask you as well. Eve, just over a year ago, 1.5 years ago, I attended an event where the Ukrainian deputy minister for foreign affairs, I believe her name was Emine Japarova, and the Dutch former ambassador to Ukraine were hosting an event, and I tried to find the clip, but I didn't have the time. But this former ambassador to Ukraine, a Dutch man, he is married to a Ukrainian woman, and he said that his family-in-law, so his Ukrainian family-in-law, they say that they want to become like Dutch people. So I wanted
Very
to ask
specific.
you, do Ukrainians or Russians or just people living there feel so insecure about their own identity that they are looking to people in the Netherlands to base their identity on becoming like them, or is this complete nonsense?
I think it's just because there are higher level of life in Europe than in Ukraine, and maybe even in most of Russia. So some people just want to move in Europe.
But you mean economically, right? Like a higher standard of living.
But not like culturally.
No.
Because as I understand it, maybe I'm editorializing, but people in Russia are very proud of their identity and of their culture, and are not looking to adopt anyone else's culture.
Yes.
All right, Koen, did you have any questions written
Yeah,
down?
I was maybe want to know about because you live in Rostov now, right? It's on the Don, so it's not right. Yeah, so it's not too far. How much do you notice the war that's going on, or maybe the economic sanctions that are on Russia, and how much do you notice them in your daily life right now?
2 or 3 times for the last half of a year, I heard explosions. It's air defense. And I know that prices became much higher, but I didn't live in Russia before war, so I have no idea how it was before war. But yes, sanctions may be affected, but not so slightly as West wants to.
And like when you go to the supermarket or the store where you buy groceries and stuff, is there anything that's maybe something that's very absent, something like a basic need or necessity, or?
There is everything like before war. No difference. Maybe higher prices, but everything.
Higher prices. Okay. Because we in the West we get all these all these images and stories that the Russian economy could collapse any second, or sorry,
that we are starving here.
well, not necessarily starving, but you hear a lot about, well, of course Russia is not selling their gas and oil to Europe anymore, and all that stuff, and you hear a lot about planes crashing a lot because Russia doesn't have its own company that manufactures plane parts and stuff. But you say there's nothing too dramatic going on, maybe.
In Rostov, nothing. Maybe in Belgrade, the things are much worse.
Okay.
Right. So maybe that's I saw on your Telegram channel something about that as well, but maybe that's something interesting to make a video about as well, like Russia under sanctions and just walking through the supermarkets, showing all the things that you supposedly don't have anymore. in a way, it's very easy. I mean, you're doing a good job. It's very easy to do what you're doing because it's just so obviously a lie, what we're being told here, that you can just walk around and film and look, this is right here. So,
yeah, it's really...
Sorry?
In Mariupol. Yeah, it's really easy to make content in Mariupol.
Right, I've also seen videos of yours in Mariupol with full stores, which actually, it surprised me how much normal life has been restored there, considering it's technically still in a war zone. So, are there any ways in which the war is still being felt apart from air defense explosions going off in Mariupol right now?
Nothing except air defense.
So no scarcity, no like disruptions. By the way, is the tram system already up and running? Because I saw a few months ago that you that they were working on that.
Yeah, I made videos about trams in Mariupol, and yes, it's a comfortable way to move.
All right. So why don't you tell our audience where people can find your videos?
My channel called Videos from Mariupol. Just search it.
Right. Place.
Is there maybe?
I'll place a link in the description. Go ahead.
Is there anything you'd like to say to our not too large but our Dutch audience, like a message or anything like that?
It's nice to understand that in every country of the world there are people who can understand the truth.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's very nice to hear. I share that.
All right. Thank you. I would say спасибо большое, товарищ. До свидания.
Вам тоже.